Hi and welcome to this session of the Power Hour. Today we are streaming directly into the Successful Bookkeeper Australia. So for those watching, please put any comments that you have down and we will watch those as well and answer any questions that you have while you're watching live. And for those joining us as well, I'll just let those people connecting in. Great to see so many people that are interested in offshoring staff. So that's what our conversation today is around offshoring staff, how we do it, why we do it, when is a good time to do it, what our expectations are around offshoring staff. So today I am joined with Debbie Roberts, of course. Hi, Deb. How you doing?
Hi, Katrina. Yeah, lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and Brian Walsh from TOA. So hi, Brian. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful to have you as a guest, as an expert in the offshoring space. Of course, as a, sorry, what is your title with TOA?
So I'm the country manager for Australia.
Right. Awesome. So please feel free to share your videos. So we'd love to see some friendly faces on the screen as well, so we can not just look at our own faces. Hi, Sharon, Jacqueline, and the others, please share your screen as well as you're jumping in. Great. Okay, and of course, put any comments that you have into the chat, any questions that you've got. It's always interactive and we love to hear from others having a chat to us as well. So let's get started. So the first question that I do want to ask or talk about in this space is, when do you know when you need a new team member? So it's always, you know, a good thing to explore. A lot of people are always hesitant about putting a team member on. They're not quite sure if they can afford it, if they've got the work for it, what they're going to give them. And of course, the fear factor of being a leader, of being an employer, because we don't go into our bookkeeping business to be an employer, usually. We're going in there to do the work that we love to do and help clients. But at some point, we get too busy and we need somebody to help us out. So I know, Deb, you've got a story around, you know, when you wanted to put staff on and, you know, when is the best time to do that?
Yeah, and I think typically, and certainly was my experience, and what I know with helping lots of bookkeepers over the last 10 years or so, most bookkeepers delay putting on a staff member because they're afraid of what might happen. They're afraid that it'll go wrong. They're worried about their reputation. Certainly that was my experience, and they put it off and put it off and put it off. And in my experience, and many of you would know my story, but just briefly, I was afraid of my reputation that was going to be damaged because I had cleaned up messes left behind by sloppy bookkeeping in the first 18 months of my work in my business. So I thought, I need to put on another bookkeeper. That's the obvious thing that I need to do, but I don't trust anyone to do the work. I thought everyone would do it the same way, but they don't. They all do it differently, and some of them are wrong, and that's too scary. And the way we generally handle that is to just work harder and faster and longer. And that's the technician, in Michael Gerber's words. That's the technician trying to solve a management problem. And so it is a change of mindset. It's coming to the point of realizing that isn't actually the solution and it's not sustainable. So how do I do this? And it's coming to the point. Look, in the very first meeting I had with Peter, he said, okay, I get where you're at and what you're afraid of. If you took the systems that you had in your head, because I had no documented systems, it was all up here, and put that down, wrote that out, and taught someone how to follow those instructions, would that work? And I said tentatively, yes, I guess that theoretically I could see how that might work. And then it was the next 6 years that it took me to write those systems and make every mistake along the way, including many recruitment errors. So it's something that is very nerve-wracking. Who can relate to that? Anyone else bit nervous about the idea of recruiting? Just
yeah. So I know for myself, you know, it's always, you always wait till the very last minute to actually put somebody on. So Brian, I imagine you've got you know, experiences or stories from the bookkeepers that are bookkeepers and accountants that are joining putting an offshore team member on, that they've got stories as well, or experiences of, you know, leaving it to the last minute. And, you know, so when do you feel, when from your experience, is a good time to put staff on?
So first of all, I would say, you know, when Debbie says, you know, you're working longer and working harder, work smarter, not harder. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, you talk about this sort of fear, and it's a common fear. It doesn't matter if you're a bookkeeper, accountant, who you are. That's a common fear, and it's in across many industries when you're recruiting. But what I would say is when there is the best time to put on a team member, you got to look at your workload, okay, and what you're actually doing. And a common piece that I see is people get caught up in the compliance world. You just because we like to just be doing it and getting caught doing the compliance. The more and more work we're doing more and more compliance, and that's less time we're spending with our clients. So the more time we can spend with our clients, it's more revenue. And when you start to realize that you're not actually spending all that time, enough time with your clients, well, then that's a really key time to really start thinking about, okay, I need to recruit somebody. And that's where you know, the outsource model really can work very well in your favor. So that's I guess one of the main things I would look at when you're thinking about outsourcing.
And also when you are coming to the realization that you need a team member, to allow yourself the time to find somebody and onboard, because it takes some time and it takes some processes, and we get time, we'll go through, you know, some of those processes in onboarding. But you know, Brian, what would you recommend as a time frame before, you know, when you get to the realization, I need somebody, which is usually too late, but you know, you'll try and get the realization that we need to get it earlier. But how long does it take to, you know, find somebody and onboard somebody?
So look, I mean, if it's outsourcing, the great thing about what we offer is we offer a dedicated outsourcing model. So it's an employee that's going to work directly for you. So it's not going to be, you know, working for various different people. It's working directly with your organization. So what I would say is, today you're bogged down in compliance. You know you need to free up some capacity, and you want more time in your life. So this is where we can get involved. We can talk through what your needs are, what sort of work you want to do. And then what I would say is it's more about, okay, we go into the recruitment process. So you're talking 60 days before you could have 60 to 90 days before you can have someone, depending on the skill set you need. But you can have somebody quite quick. I mean, the beauty about outsourcing is you can engage a business to actually support you with the recruitment. And you know, I can see some friendly faces on the line here at the moment that have been through this. So being able to engage someone that understands the recruitment, understands how to recruit, the skills that are required, work with you to do all the HR, all that kind of piece, it makes it so much more easier. Where if you're doing it yourself direct, you've got the hassles of job advertisement, you've all this, and that can really take a lot of time, a lot of energy, can be very costly as well. So I would say, in terms of your timelines, you're at a stage where you realize you'd like to either spend more time with your clients, offer more services. You might want more time in your day. So that's the time you really want to start engaging. So engage then, and then, from there, you can actually have somebody working with you quite quick.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that it could take up to 90 days, 60 to 90 days to settle somebody in. And then, I speak to some bookkeepers, and it depending on the skill set of the person and the person that they're finding, it could still take several months to actually transfer a lot of that work that you expect them to do over to that person as well, for them to be doing it successfully and you know, comfortably. So, you know, it comes back to hire earlier. So if you have the business model where you're wanting to scale and leverage from, you know, the work that you do and the from your systems that you've got in place, go earlier than later, and the work will come in because you are more freed up to concentrate on getting new clients and networking and onboarding the right client and pushing a lot of the work over to your team member. So, you know, I really urge you to not get to a point where we have a lot of bookkeepers come to us that become a licensee, and they talk to us about the overwhelm that they, you know, they're in the 120, 150,000 and they're doing it all themselves. And they've put every cap on that they, you know, you need to do, your leader and your HR and your marketing and your sales. They're doing everything plus the production, of course. So don't, you know, if you spoke to those bookkeepers and said, what would you do 6 months earlier? And it would always be to hire staff, put, you know, resources into your business, knowing that you are going to scale, utilizing other people's skills and workload. So, and I think it's around 100,000, 80 to 100,000 in turnover, where I think you need to start looking at putting a staff member on. Would you agree, Brian? Is that where your bookkeepers are sitting, around that dollar value?
Around that dollar value is a good stage, it's a good point to do it. But like at the same time, I mean, just look at your business and look at what you want to achieve. I mean, is it that you want to spend more time with your clients, or is it you want more time back in your day? So that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think another way of looking at when are you ready is linked to what Brian is saying. Like, you've got to work out that it's about the workload, but it's also about money as well, what you can afford, and work out what you can get all practical about it and work out what your take home pay, what's the minimum amount you need to be able to live off, and then see how does that equate then to time in your business. And I would also recommend you find ways to really strip out any unnecessary expenses, look at all those sorts of things so that you can better afford to put on another bookkeeper, and certainly at offshore, if that's an option that you're looking at as well.
So let's move to, what do we need to have done? What do we need to prepare for to put a staff member on? So, you know, I know, Deb, you know, this is where you spent so much time in creating your systems. So perhaps you could talk a bit about, you know, the systems that people need to have in place, the foundations to make sure that the work is done to your level of expectation.
Yeah, and I think like I spent 6 years developing the system in its current form, but you don't have to spend that amount of time, obviously. And of course, we've got licensees on the call today who'll be using the Pure Bookkeeping system. If you are starting out, you need to document client-specific instructions. It has to be, we do this on this day, and this is how we do that. And to quite a level of detail, you need checklists, Loom videos, written descriptions of how that process happens. You can't expect to hand over to another, even a well-trained, educated, got all the certificates and things like that. In fact, that's the biggest mistake I see happening, is that you get a TOA staff member, or you recruit yourself and you get a bookkeeper, and then you throw them in the deep end and you say, right, go and do this client's work, as if they're supposed to just know by osmosis that how to actually do that. And how, even more importantly, how do you want them to do that? So, you know, my saying is, if you put 10 bookkeepers in a room, there's 10 different ways of doing the same thing. So if you get a TOA staff, it doesn't matter where you get them from, they will be doing it slightly differently because of the way they've been trained or their education and where they've come from. what it's all about with your systems is standardizing the way it's done. And it really, like, there's lots of steps in that, in training them yourself in your own systems. But I think to keep it really simple, to start off with, because the whole creating systems is overwhelming. So start off with the client's bookkeeping manual. So as I said, that's a checklist. It's in your workflow management. It's online. It's accessible. It's something that they can access from wherever they are in the world, that you can see what has been done, but there's also instructions about how that's done. If you don't do that, then you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, that's some great points. And Brian, what do you find with your bookkeepers, or what do you recommend to your bookkeepers and accountants to prepare before they start offshoring?
Yeah, well, look, we will always, I mean, Deb's hit the nail on the head there. I mean, we will always ask, have you got the systems, processes, and the technology in place? It's very important that you have your workflows in place, you have your systems in place, and you have the right technology in place. Once you have that, I mean, it's one of the things I love about pure bookkeeping is actually the frameworks you have. It makes it very seamless to be able to replicate this anywhere. So, and it's, I mean, that's, I mean, I know I've said this to you guys time and time again, but those systems and those frameworks really do support how you manage, or how your offshore employee or even your onshore employees actually work. So they're key. Also, it's, I think, making sure that training is always very, very important. You may have all the systems, processes, and the technology in place, but no matter whether you hire onshore or offshore, doesn't matter, you need to make sure you train. And to Debbie's point about the likes of the Loom videos and things, they're great. Like, record what you're doing. They really are things that you can keep in a library. You can refer back to, as you grow, you more employees, you can keep referring to, and it becomes a replicable. It's repeatable. So yeah, for me, that's very, very important, and it's something that we will always ask every bookkeeper, accountant to make sure that we ask them, do they have those the systems, technology, and processes in place? Because if they don't, it's not going to be successful. So it's very, very important that you have those. And look, majority of bookkeepers and majority of accountants have this in place. Okay, so it's just knowing how, it's just more the training element.
Yeah. What are some of the technologies that people need to have in place for offshoring in particular?
Well, look, it comes down to your tech stack, what you have. We don't advise on any particular tech stack. I mean, when you have an offshore employee, they can work with any tech stack. What we do recommend, though, is you have something like Practice Protect, where everything sits behind, and you have that all the technology is there. For us, then, like, I mean, we've got our own academy. So the TOA Academy is within our ecosystem, and within there, we do a lot of training. So you got, your Xero training, QuickBooks training, and so on, so on. And it can even like all the different apps there. Like, I mean, we've quite a lot of different apps that we can train on. So we can help support that training. But again, it also you have to help with the training.
Yeah. And I think the security, as you said, Practice Protect is one that that we both recommend. Really, it's one that a lot of our licensees use as well, to ensure that that anybody logging in remotely, and we're in a remote world now, working with COVID and more and more offshoring, that we need that level of security and make sure that we're not passing passwords out, and something that can be shared with other people. So having something at that level of like Practice Protect is needed.
Yeah. So for our business, we actually use Practice Protect onshore and offshore, and we always recommend to use it onshore and offshore.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Awesome. I'd like to, is anybody on the call today that's got any questions, or that might like to make any comments about how they're offshoring, and prepared themselves, what systems they've put into place, or, what they've what they've got themselves organised for offshoring.
I've got a question.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sharon.
I just want to know what would be a reasonable expectation of work. So say for me, it takes me an hour to do a task. What would be a reasonable expectation of an offshore team member, but then also an onshore or a senior as opposed to a junior bookkeeper? So that's either for Brian or Deb or anybody really, but just what would be the expectation? If it takes me an hour, should it take a senior bookkeeper an hour and a half to 2 hours? Should it take an offshore team member 3 to 4 hours? I just...
Who would like to start?
It's got to be reasonable.
Yeah, I can put in my ideas around that, and my thoughts around that is that I don't believe you can be that precise, because it actually depends. I don't know how fast I don't know what you're working on. I don't know the problem that what data entry you're doing or whatever, whether it's a complex thing or something simple. And also what the skill level of the bookkeeper that you are hiring. What I could say, though, is that generally you would expect it to take longer. I don't feel I could say, oh, it'll take you an extra, this amount of time. I always expected in my business, in fact, I had a conversation with the team, that this should take you 5 hours to do. If it takes you longer than that, then we need to have a chat about that to see where you're, and you would monitor it very closely. You don't wait till 5 hours and then say, right, where are you up to? That's the whole bit about, especially when you're starting someone. You don't dump them in that. You actually have this showing their screen. When I was training my staff, and it wasn't remote, it was in an office, I would physically sit beside them for at least the first session and just watch everything they did. And that's actually how I provide, because I didn't have a training program when I was growing my business. We introduced that with PB. But so my way of training them was to sit beside them. Now, the great thing about running virtual businesses or our offshoring and things like that is that they can be showing their screen. You can actually be doing something else on your other screen beside them, and you glance over and see what they're up to, and you can see how quickly or slowly they're moving around, even to the point of there's been no movement, and you're going, what's wrong? Are you stuck on something? So I'd say I don't think you can be precise. But Brian, what would you suggest?
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Brian.
I would so our business is based in the Philippines. Okay, so that's where we outsource to. And what I love about the Philippines is the level of education. So the degrees that all of our bookkeepers and accountants are all qualified. So they love to learn. Okay, so when you ask about time, like it can vary, and it can vary by the different skills. I mean, whether it's intermediate, senior, or whatever that is. I mean, you taking an hour might take them 45 minutes. There's all that piece. But what I love about the environments is you've got your team member sitting in an environment with a lot of other people that are doing the same thing. And they are, that it creates a real productivity. And if there's people who are stuck, they've got people they can ask, and to Debbie's point, you've got you can have the screen share, so you're actually, your camera's on, you're talking through things, you've got your videos, you've all of that piece. But I would say, I mean, the qualifications in the Philippines are really, really good. And that's one of the things that I really, really love about the Philippines and the Filipino culture, and people that are so process driven and love to do this kind of work.
Yeah. And what I wanted to put in there is that I always expected the staff that are put on were going to take longer. So just to realise that, because a lot of bookkeepers don't, they go, okay, I'll put somebody on, and I used to take 5 hours. Why are you taking 6.5? So it's just the realisation that nobody will be as fast as you. Except for those that put up their hand and say, I'm a really slow typer, which I have had bookkeepers say my staff are faster than I am. So, that's a win. And also, you know, I guess it's the skill and experience. So as they are developing over time, they are, you know, getting more an idea of how, you know, efficiencies and how to, you know, even make suggestions of how to do things faster. So, you know, that's the ideal that you want from a staff member. One of my staff members would just move papers around the desk and take so long in doing stuff. And that's because I did not have clear instructions for what they needed to do. So they'd get a whole lot of paperwork that they'd never got last month or wasn't in, you know, my manual or whatever. And they'd go, well, I don't know what to do with this stuff. So they didn't have clear instructions to say, do not enter personal bank statements, because they were provided with a whole lot of personal bank statements. So if you've got clear instructions, they can get moving on the job, you know, faster and more efficiently, which will help with that time waste that, you know, could always be there. So, you know, making sure all of those instructions and videos and manuals are there to help support them do it as quickly as they can, and then just keep skilling themselves as well.
Yep.
And also, I would add to that a big mistake I made was I had a model initially where I figured, particularly once I got my office, but it doesn't matter. As I say, it's the same thing really, but just virtually. But when I got my office and I had all these workstations, and bookkeepers came in on set days. So, but clients' work didn't necessarily come in on set days. So the mistake I made was whoever arrived in the office, whoever was working that day worked on this client's stuff, if that was the one that arrived that day as well. But that wasn't necessarily the client that they always worked on. So it might seem pretty basic, a very dumb mistake, but I figured that if I had, you know, my team, they could just swap around, but they weren't, I didn't have the right systems and they weren't trained well enough and all of those things. And I just thought, oh no, I will just get, you know, Mary's in today, they can do ABC company. But the amount of questions that you would get, it's like having someone brand new who's never seen a file have got a lot more questions than if they've done it 3 or 4 times over the next 3 or 4 months or something. And that took an enormous, I then had to have supervisors to check the work and be available to answer. So whoever worked on it last month, they would be the ones, if they were in the, it was just so don't do that. Assign the client to the bookkeeper, do a proper handover, do all the training, and then that's the person that they will look after. And then you then add to that, but they will get to know that client. They understand how they're doing business. They understand, oh, that's a personal statement. They don't process that because they learned that last time. So assign, and the exception I would suggest to that these days with the technology is you may have a bookkeeper but it's more admin that, for example, you might say, I want you to scan every client stuff, you know, or upload it to in Receipt Bank, or do a particular task, and they might do that task for all your clients, for example, that whoever's working on, whenever the stuff comes in, one person is responsible for doing that. But that's more an administrative thing rather than a bookkeeping thing. So that would be the exception I would suggest. But otherwise, my recommendation is train your bookkeeper for this particular client, and it'll be much easier for them to be trained. They will make less mistakes over time. They will become faster because they become more familiar with the work.
Great. And I've noticed, Jacqueline, you're putting some questions in which we are going to be dealing with. The topics of conversation, we'll answer those questions for you as we go through. So actually, I might go to that skills test now that you've talked about, you know, do TOA check qualification. So, you know, what skills do you expect an offshore team member to have? So Brian, maybe you start with that question.
Yeah, so I mean, look, as I said already, you know, all of our accountants and bookkeepers are fully qualified. You know, and we also so we're actually we've just attained our RTO. So we're a registered training organization, and we can train it's offshore staff. So we actually can train staff to, in Cert 4 bookkeeping and accounting. We can, have certified BAS agents. So, we keep adding to our, I guess, our library and within our academy as well. But, the qualifications are very high. I think, if anyone that works with us will understand that, the quality is very, very high. We do go through rigorous recruitment processes. So, we have all these processes in place to make it seamless for you, but also to make sure that you're getting the quality candidates that you require to help support your business.
Mm. And it's going to depend on the work that you do require that person to do, whether they are just going to be a level 1 type of worker, or level 1 or level 2, what I call a level 1 or 2, somebody that's just going to be doing the data processing, or if you need a higher, level 3, 4 doing the BAS review work. And, you guarantee that they're going to be qualified, but also have the additional training. I know TOA have like a 1 week full, intensive training of different, applications and different things that they're training in, which is great. So whatever team member that you do put on, you do want somebody that has bookkeeping or accounting qualifications. Ideally, that they've got some, they know their debits and credits. They know the basics of bookkeeping and what they're looking at when they're talking about a chart of accounts or what's an expense. So when you're putting staff on, you need at least that level of qualification, which is great, is covered with, TOA's already got that in the bag. And then the other training that they might do around, the workflow management software that you're doing. So, you could be looking for somebody that has a skill already in carbon, or is willing to train up in carbon. So, the skills that you're wanting your staff member, really consider what the skills are that are going to be in line with the business that you, that you're creating, and also perhaps a skill that you may not already have. So maybe somebody that is really, loves administration, and has an admin degree or a business administration. Because that's another one of the questions that are coming up, that what work can an offshore person do? Because I know TOA does, and a lot of offshore companies require hiring out a full-time person. So, and we've got a lot of conversation around this, but I know, Brian, that you've got some examples of what other work your staff can do, your team members can do, not just bookkeeping.
Yeah, so I think a question came through from Jacqueline. You were asking about, I think it was admin. So yes, certainly the offshore staff can do admin. Like what's great about the Filipino culture, they really like to please, and they really like to learn. So to go back to what Katrina was saying a minute ago about the training and that, we've very much encouraged that all employees have learning paths. So they have, because we provide quite a lot of training, that they have a learning path, so they can continue, they can grow themselves both, personally and professionally. So like we do a lot of soft skills training, we do a lot of technical training. So that's really helps with, it's a retention play as well. But it, the staff then can, they can be able to do, as Katrina said, they can if it's high level BAS, or if it's just compliance work, or if it's just administration work. So, they can do pretty much what you need them to do.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of licensees that are utilizing TOA, and the common question is, I don't have enough work for a full-time staff member, but they have got them to do a lot of their administration. So whether it is creating reports for their business, so they're doing a lot of admin, they're doing a lot of analysis of their invoicing, excuse me, so that the business owner can create the fixed fee strategy. So we're putting a lot of data down onto spreadsheets so the business owner can utilize that. You know, they could get into some social media posting as well, some of the admin stuff that you're currently doing that you can see can pass over to another person. You don't always need to be doing everything. So identifying what the workload that you do, what else you can pass over to somebody else. And, you know, some of the TOA staff can also do the entire invoicing of, you know, if you've got your times in your workflow management software or your timesheets, then they can just pull that information out. If it's just a standard, you know, you've got your system in place around your invoicing, they can take care of that. So Helen, I think you also asked around admin or hiring hiring for full time. Was it you, Helen, that asked that? Full time?
Yes, Helen.
So yeah. So is there, for example, is there work that you see that you could hand over to an offshore team member that would help your business grow, help, you know, take some workload off you that maybe a staff member's doing onshore?
I just lost a staff member. Well, I didn't lose them, I let them go. So we're pretty much, I have 2 others left. One is still at the learning path and doing things slowly, and the other is that we're both at overcapacity. I rang Sharon, or message, and yeah, Sharon was straight away, we need an offshore staff member for you. So unfortunately, the 2 months waiting list is already making me just shake because I don't want to be doing this for 2 months. So,
so Helen, just to your point there, that 2 months wait, if you know the kind of the skills you need, the kind of person you need, it can move a lot quicker than that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, it comes down to the recruitment. So I mean, if you wanted to have a conversation offline around that, I can guide you on that piece very quickly.
Yeah, I think Brian.
I might add to that any one of our licensees using the Pure Bookkeeping system recruitment process, I usually say it takes a good 3 months using our system. Whereas if you use TOA, because they're already, you know, they've jumped through all the hoops, you don't actually have to even skills test them using our skills test. They can go straight into the training program, the PB training program, which speaks, I think, Helen, to your other question.
Yeah, that was my question.
Trained in the PBS. Yeah. They're not currently trained in the PBS. Well, the licensees who have TOA staff are trained in the PBS, but it's not part of their education program to train them in the PBS. But you would then get them to do the training program, and then they'd start using the tools, but they've got all the instructions in the system, in the checklists, in the manuals, and then they just ask you questions.
I think it's
much quicker with TOA, I would suggest, than going, and much less painful, because you've got to, in using the PBS without TOA, without offshoring, you have to look through all the resumes, and you can get hundreds of those. The amount of time that you have to spend actually wading through all of that is quite significant when you're already busy.
Yeah, I think my fear is also that, going back to the quality of the work when you get someone, and with TOA also, is you finally get someone to help and then you're not compatible. You know, yes, we can train people to do bookkeeping, or I'm prepared to know that you've got to review their work, and, you know, there's continual training in the way that you do, you run your business and your systems. But I guess it's that connection you make with people too. That scares me. It scares me that I won't have that connection, and you think, oh, I've got to start all over again. So I'm not sure how you feel about that, Brian.
No, it's an interesting point that you make there, because it's actually amazing the connections you do make with your global team. And you know, in the hiring process, we will always, a part of that process is actually hiring for culture, hiring that person is a fit for your business. So so you're making sure that you're hiring a person that you can work with. And I think, you know, anyone that has, you know, that is offshoring can agree with that, would agree with that. It's very seldom I see that that connection isn't made.
And what I've seen with TOA as well, Brian, and you might be able to speak to this, that because when we all went on the roadshow last year, I found out a lot more about TOA. And you go to great lengths to help Australians understand the Filipino culture as well, and even encouraging them to go over, well, you can't at the moment, but, you know, under normal circumstances, because you know how important it is to the Filipinos to feel like they are connected with their employer and the culture of the business. Is that right?
So part of the onboarding is actually around the culture. So we, you know, the whole way through the whole onboarding piece, we will talk about culture. We will talk about all of those sorts of things. And to your point, Debbie, we run a roadshow once a year, twice a year, where we actually visit every state in Australia, well, all the major states in Australia. And we provide the frameworks to help you succeed with your offshore team. And we keep iterating on that all the time and giving more content. We then have a conference once a year, which is generally held in the Philippines. It's unfortunately at the moment we can't, but in that conference, we get a large amount of our clients come to the Philippines. We put on a really good conference, but the great thing about it is it's a week long, and our clients can spend time with their team members. They get to go then. They spend time in our offices so they can see what the offices are like. You know, the operation we run. You can, you know, sit side by side with your team member. You can take your team member off team building. So we provide all that. But the other part that I love about it, and actually it's quite heartwarming as well, is that a lot of our clients actually bring their team members over to Australia so they can spend time with their offices here. So it's quite interesting the way it works, and there's a huge bond is always built throughout that process as well. So we're very much into making sure that it's cultural fit, making sure that our clients understand the culture, understand how to work with Filipinos, etc.
Brian, can I ask why is there like, as someone mentioned in the chat, the staff are full-time? What's the reason for not being able to like take on a permanent 20-hour a week or you know, part-time person?
So we don't do part-time work. We're very much an employee-centric business. So we want to hire people that go into a full-time role to make sure they have full-time employment. Also, the other part of it is you don't want, you know, your team member working for you, for you half the day, another person another half a day, and then it gets mix mash, working on different systems. It's, you know, that can impact on the quality. So really, for us, it's, you know, it's a full-time employee. They're working with you. They're doing, you know, whether they're doing the compliance, admin, whatever that is, but they're trained in your business, the way you run your business. They're a fit for your business. They fit the culture, everything.
Yeah. And that's answered Nicola's question as well around the need for full-time, which and you'll find that you will fill up a full-time member pretty quickly with bookkeeping and admin and just support, the business support stuff that you can get them to do as well.
And Brian, the other thing that it's kind of related to the whole culture question. Again, this is me remembering back to what I heard at the roadshow. As I understand it, you put, so if someone's got two or more Philippine, the offshore staff, you actually put them so they're seated close together or something like that. Is that still happening?
Sorry, I just say it broke up there slightly for me. I don't know if it was my internet yours, but are you saying, so if you have two staff members, is that what you said?
If you have two or more staff, you actually group them together. So they're physically near each other as well. So they get to know each other and can have chats and coffees and stuff like that. Is that?
Yeah, no, sitting together is important because, look, at the end of the day, you're working and learning together. So we would have teams sitting together. One of the things, you know, that I guess now it all comes down to the amount of work you have, but a lot of very successful people, a lot of the sort of the success stories come with, you know, with bookkeepers that have, you know, a lot of work, where they will hire two together so they can train together, onboard together, because it's far more cost effective to do it that way in the long run. Because what I do see all the time is we start with one team member, and then within a couple of months, when you see the benefits, it's okay, well, now I'm adding another. So that, you know, that can be, you know, you're back into the training again. Now, even though you already have one team member that helps support training, it is easier to train two than one, you know, which I guess is common sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, Rosie on the Facebook has asked, what is your academy called? So it's TOA, so it's the Outsourced Accountant Academy, so TOA Academy. Elizabeth has asked, what kind of cost is hiring through TOA compared to hiring locally? So I'm not sure if you want to address that now or take it offline with Elizabeth.
Yeah, I can take that offline with Elizabeth, but it depends on the I guess the skill set you require, the qualifications you require. Look, it's hugely cost effective, as we all know. But again, like, I mean, instead of throwing figures out there, it's easier for me to actually just have a conversation and just understand the kind of person you're looking for, so I can let you know the exact sort of ballpark range of what the cost will be.
Yeah, and I think Elizabeth is a brand new licensee as well, so there'll be the PB support with that as well. Sharon has asked, could two people share an employee?
I mean, look, we don't recommend it. I mean, it's that comes down to you. I mean, one person would have the contract with TOA. It's, you know, I think, if doing that, then what can happen is, you know, your work's not getting done, the other person's work's getting done. It's you can have those issues. So I would recommend that, you know, it's your employee.
Yeah, because the worst thing is that you have the same team member doing your work as well as somebody else's work, and then the other person builds up their workload, and then they want to take over the team member, and then you're left in the lurch with no team member. So
and really it's not much different when you think about it. Like when I had my staff, I allowed them to have other clients, so they were for the contractors, then they weren't full-time for me. They filled their books with other clients, but that did at times cause a problem, whereby sometimes my clients were finished last or put below their own clients. So there can be that issue when you've even got a staff member in Australia that's working part-time for you, and they've got other work or their contract work and things like that. It's I agree. I think it's a little bit problematic, and could cause some serious issues if you tried to share a TOA staff.
Yeah, and Jacqueline's asked an interesting question. Could all the staff that are employed by PBS licensees be seated together? So like we go over to our Xero conferences, all the licensees get together to have a bit of a gas bag and a social event. I'm not sure if that is, you know, logistically possible, but who knows? They could.
I think you've created a logistical nightmare for our ops team. Look, so just to that point, look, there are certain clients that, you know, they would like to have their team members sit beside another client. We do our utmost to actually support that. Okay, so if you do have a team member and, you know, it's, you know, you want them to sit next to someone else that you know of in TOA, well, we will try our best to be able to facilitate that.
Maybe we need to supply the TOA staff with little pins like a PB, so all the PB licensees staff know who they are, just with a little pin. Find each other in the big room that they're all working in.
Yeah.
Just as a social event.
Could I just add to Helen's question earlier about skills and things about the team member? You know, we hear horror stories about offshoring. I think it's more about how you train your team member. we can all dump someone in at the deep end and say, get this work done. But if we don't give them guidance and do quality checking on their work, then we will end up rubbish in, rubbish out. So I think it's about you maintaining the level and setting the benchmark as to what the level of work is that you'll accept and the quality of the work. And then that's up to you to train them the way that you want them trained, and not to allow for second-rate work to be pumped out for any old reason, just for the fact that the work's then completed. So it is up to you and how you train them and how specific you are.
And I agree with that as well, Sharon, that whether you get a TOA staff member or you recruit yourself in Australia and go through the 12 weeks of getting them, you still don't dump them in the deep end. You still, as pure bookkeeping licensees, run them through the training program, It's just the beginning. Like, the recruitment is the beginning of the ongoing training and initial onboarding and things like that. And that would apply to whether you've got an onshore or an offshore staff member.
Yeah. Absolutely. Doesn't matter where they're based, whether they're here or there or whatever company you use. Yeah.
Exactly. So the next topic that I'd like to talk about is the transitioning of your workload over to a team member, whether it's offshore. So I know when I'm, talking to bookkeepers now in how to do their transitioning, it's like identifying what work you have got in your own office that you want to hand over to somebody. So then you can identify what level of skill and experience that you require to do that work. And then I usually set up an Excel spreadsheet and go, well, here's the clients and here's the workload I want to pass over, and then have a time frame. So it might be, the first month I'm going to hand over these 3 clients and they're going to do AP and AR and bank rec. And then phase 2, so the next month is they're going to do some, report packs or whatever. Or the next 3 clients are going to come in. So that's what I'd recommend in doing a transition, is having a worksheet with time frames so that you've got an idea and they have an idea of what's coming up that needs to be passed over. You would never just go, okay, here are your 12 clients, here are your client manuals, see what you can do with it. It always, you want to put them in a position of success. You want them to succeed. So you want to give them the best chance to do that. And whether that takes, weeks or a couple of months to transition them right over to their full 12 clients, make it easy for them. Set them up for success. Don't sabotage them from the first, which is, okay, I just want to get rid of these clients. I'm too busy. Just go off and do it. Give your whole practice an opportunity to succeed in the transition.
Katrina, can I ask, just to clarify that, are you saying more so give them, say, 4 clients and let them just do the basic, the process, maybe from the data processing hub doc, receipt bank to Xero to the drafts, and maybe just clear what bank feeds match up? Just say, leave it at that, let them get to know that process with the same clients over and over before you hand more. Is that what you're saying? Or is it more of just give them one client, make them do the whole, teach them to do the whole process before you give them more clients?
Look, it's going to depend on the workload that you're wanting to hand over initially. And it could be bits of pieces of the client. So you could just get them to do AP, so you're comfortable, you reviewed that. And that might just take 3 days. It depends on the workload. So if they're doing that work regularly and they're getting up to speed and they're doing it comfortably, then you'd hand over, the bank rec type of stuff. So, if it's a small client and they know how to do AP and bank rec, they're bookkeepers, they've got, an accounting degree. If it's a small client, then you might just hand them over the small client and just watch them as they're going through. But don't just give them all 12 clients to do the whole lot. Do it in stages and review them at each stage to make sure that they are doing it accurately. Because if you give them 12 clients and they're doing it wrong from the start and a month later you're testing all 12, well, then you have an issue.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, Helen, as you're a licensee, a good place to start, like if you've completed the second phase, so the step 4 and step 5, which is customizing the chart of accounts and putting in the reports and things like that, they should be able to start using the monthly reconciliation and review checklist. Obviously, they've done the work beforehand, but then round it off by, because that then teaches them how to make sure that everything has reconciled, and they put numbers in the cells and they save all the reports. So they're doing a combination of learning the pure bookkeeping system plus also getting the work done, and you can then audit the work using the checklist. So start off with the monthly, and I agree completely with Katrina. My big rule is never give a new bookkeeper a new client. So absolutely don't make that mistake. It would need to be clients that you can say, this should take you 5 hours to do this work. Now, you expect that it will take longer. You might be pleasantly surprised because and it turned out they're faster than you. I put on, it happened to me occasionally where, and one in bookkeeper I remember in particular, I trained her the same way. I took her on site to a client, and in the first day, the questions she was asking me were so high level, I thought, hallelujah, I've actually found one of a specialist. This in one day, like that, in one session, I identified her because of her skills. I could see how she was thinking. She was asking really smart questions. And you go, oh, yeah, she's getting this. I can see I'll be able to throw other work at her. But until they prove themselves to you that they are asking the right questions, you give them known clients that aren't a rescue, that are up to date, and they're starting from a clean slate.
And you've got the thorough client manual and the checklists, which you would have created already. And you be guided by their ability and you know, as Deb said, if they're asking the right questions and they're not making mistakes, then you're guided, well, okay, I'm going to hand you the next one. So that's, you know, it might be phase 1, 2 and 3, and you might say, you know, every 2 weeks there'll be a new phase, but they could be doing phase 3 in the second week because they've taken it on. They've, you know, you're comfortable. Yep, that bit's done. Good. Let's do the next bit. Good. Next bit. Good. So you just got that level of that comfort and the quality assurance, because that's what we need, is a quality assurance that the staff are doing the right work.
An exercise for you would be to, Katrina was talking about an Excel sheet, is to those clients that, so you've lost a staff member, you've got between you and your other senior staff member, you've now, those clients have come back to you. So identify which ones you could hand over to a new bookkeeper straight away, because the manual's in place, the system's in place. You just need someone to actually do the work. And because you know what you've made the decision about what clients you're going to hand over, you'll have an idea about what type of work, what level work is this. So is it level 1? Is it level 2? And then you'll be able to go to Brian with some concrete information to say, I need someone that's able to do these things. And then the more information you can give him and more specific about the type of bookkeeper you're looking for, as he said earlier, the quicker he will be able to put the two of you together.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything to add to that conversation, Brian?
I think you covered everything there.
Yeah. Cool. A couple more questions. Jacqueline has asked, how many employees are in a complex?
Okay, so we actually have a number of complexes. So we have 5 offices in the Philippines, spread out over Manila, Clark, and Cebu. And we've in excess of 1,700 employees. So it's quite a big operation. The beauty of our complexes is, like, when you think about outsourcing, you think about BPO, the BPO industry. Our offices, the desk sizes are quite big. The team members all have dual screens. They've got you know, their PCs. We have full wellness programs for all our employees. We have in the offices, there's breakout rooms. We've got top of the range canteens. So anyone that has been in our offices in the Philippines will know you know, the level we go to provide a really, really nice environment for our employees.
And Jacqueline, TOA provide the computer and the desk. Yep. and all of that. It's part of the onboarding package, I suppose, but it becomes, I don't know, it's TOA's computer, or is it the business owner's computer?
TOA's computer.
Yeah.
And in fact, last year, are they all back in the offices now, Brian?
So not everybody's back in the offices. We've about 30% of our staff back in the office. Like the Philippines, they still have, you know, there's still COVID's still a thing there, which is, you know, unlike Australia and most of the world. But like, to be honest with you, the infrastructure in the Philippines is starting to get running again. What's happened is a lot of clients, because they've team members working at home here, they are allowing their team members to work from home in the Philippines, with the view that we'll all be back in the office by this year.
Yeah. But I know when the lockdown happened over in the Philippines, because we were talking to Nick, and he said you had to get computers, everything into everyone's homes, and it was a mammoth. I can't even imagine the size of that task.
We were very lucky. We have a great team in the Philippines. We've a great team here in Australia. We were able to mobilize. Our full BCP went into operation. We were able to mobilize everyone within 48 hours.
Yeah. We are at the top of the hour, but I would like to ask, if you've got time, Brian, to ask Sharon's question. How does TPB view outsourced employees with regard to STP and BAS services? So, you know, allowing offshore staff to do tax practitioner board. How does the tax practitioner board view offshoring staff?
They're actually supportive. I mean, we provide, I mean, look, the BAS side of things, we train for BAS certification. We could do tax practitioner, the tax side of things, but it's, to be honest, the BAS is where we concentrate at the moment.
And Brian, I remember in the roadshow, actually there was big discussions with the TPB, I think, or the ATO. There was about, because they brought in a new regulation with security and cyber stuff, and that was something that you were dealing with at that time.
Yeah, so this was when the ATO moved from AusKey to MyGov ID. So at the time there was, I guess, that move and the impact on offshore employees, I guess, hadn't been fully, I guess, researched at the time. So we spent a lot of time working with the ATO, just going through the various, you know, the various things that offshore employees do. And really, you know, the impact it had on both the bookkeeping and accounting community in Australia.
Yeah.
And we still keep in regular contact with the ATO to, you know, around the offshore side of things.
Yeah, awesome. Jacqueline, you do have a couple of questions. I'm just wondering if, Brian, do you have to run off to another meeting?
No, I'm fine.
You're right. So Jacqueline has asked what sort of qualifications are expected to be a basic bookkeeper. So,
sorry, go.
You go on.
You can say go on, Katrina.
I was going to say that usually bookkeepers are looking for a qualified accountant. They usually are asking for that type of skill. Is that right? Is it?
Yeah, well, the majority of our employees are degree qualified.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So it's that and you want that level of qualification and you know, to be an accountant, to have that understanding. And also, Jacqueline, around the payment, it's TOA. I'm not sure how the legality is. It's TOA pays the wages.
Yeah. So we do all the payroll. Yeah.
So we, as the Australian business owner, just pays you, and you distribute it to the wages. Yep. Was there any last questions from anybody at all? I think I've got
a quick one. How is actual payment made? Like is it EFT to an Australian bank account for TOA, or it is? Okay.
We're an Australian business.
Yeah.
Yeah, their main, your main office, Gold Coast or Queensland at least?
Yep, we have our head office here in the Sunshine, or sorry, in Surfers Paradise, and then we have an office in San Diego. We have an office in Toronto. So they're the main hubs, and then we have all our operations in the Philippines.
Yeah. And Jacqueline's asked if they're so qualified, how do they feel about doing basic data entry? And I think you had a good response to that, Brian.
They love it. This is what I started to start. I mean, that's what they like doing. It's unlike, you know, when we hire someone onshore and, you know, they come in, a new graduate, and you put them doing compliance work for a year, and all they want to do is get in front of a client. So, but yeah, everyone has to learn the basics straight away. But it actually helps fast forward our onshore employees to be able to get in front of clients, and the offshore teams, they just love doing the compliance work. They love being able to, you know, provide you what you need.
Yeah, they really do want to please, and they do want to just, you know, get in and get the work done. And yeah, if they've got clear instructions on how to do stuff, they just get in and do it. Okay, I think that's the last of the questions, and we are just past the hour, so I'll close it up. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending today and for listening in the Facebook Live. If you've got any questions, once you've watched the recording, just pop them in there, and we'll be watching out for post questions after this event. And I'd especially like to thank Brian at very last minute to be available today to, you know, provide the answers, and being, you know, inside that offshoring space. It's good to be able to have somebody to ask some extra questions about how it actually works. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And always a pleasure with you, Deb.
Thank you, Katrina, as always.
Yeah. Lovely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye.
See ya.